All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you or welcome to our next conversation series. This one is going to be about the National Association of Breeders. And we're delighted tonight to have Dr. Julie Alford, who's the president of the National Association of Breeders, and Joe Dampier, who's the vice president. We're going to have two little sections to this particular conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about how this organization started and sort of what that process looked like, and then we'll go into what they do today. So to kick it off, we'll just do some general introductions. So Julie, would you like to give us a little background on who you are and how you got started in horses and foxtrotters?
I'm a physician at Mercy Hospital in Springfield, Missouri. I've lived in Missouri my entire life, except for 4 years when I lived in Oklahoma City when I was in training. And I got started in foxtrotters because my mother got one in 1969 and started showing, and it has evolved from there into a whole one. So my sister lives on our farm in Buffalo, Missouri, and then me and my daughter live in Springfield, Missouri, involved with the horses.
All right, very good. Joe, would you like to do a little introduction?
Absolutely. So actually both sets of, as far as how I got started, both sets of my grandparents on my mom's side and my dad's side both had foxtrotters and showed horses. And of course, my dad trains horses. So it's pretty naturally for me to be involved in them. And that's kind of how I've started. So.
All right, well, very good. Well, we'll kick off with a little bit of history of the National Association of Breeders. So it started in 1995, and I think, Julie, you were a part of that group that sort of set out wanting to form this organization. So kind of walk me through what the vision was, why you guys thought something was needed, and how it got started.
So there was an organization called Tournament of Breeders first. And it was organized, I believe, by Dave Murray, Carl Lowe, and Justin Dampier. And they started a program where they collected nomination fees from stallions that made those foals eligible to show. And they were going to have, I think, one open and one amateur 2-year-old class at the 3-year-old maturity. And they had, I can't remember if they did that 1 or 2 years. And then they just kind of ceased to function. And so in 1994, that was in the early 90s. In 1994, Gary McCord called a meeting of interested stallion owners and said, we need to do a similar thing. And several of us met many times in Gary's basement to get this started. And so we started in 1995, and actually that year, with a lot of work by multiple people, we collected not only the stallion nomination fee for 1995, but went back and collected it for 1994. And so then we had our first show in 1997 at the fairgrounds with our only NBC class being the 2-year-olds, and had a 3-day show anyway, I believe, with just other classes. And then we moved to the Cowan Center in Lebanon for 2 or 3 years, and then came back to the fairgrounds in Springfield after that, and have been there ever since. And it has grown from 2-year-olds, then 3-year-olds were added, then 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and on from there.
So why did the group see a need for an organization like this? What was the purpose?
We just felt that we needed an organization that was really driven by people interested in breeding foxtrotters, stallion owners, but others as well, because there were certainly some non-stallion owners in that first founding group and have been ever since, to try and produce a show that was kind of a high profile show with the best prize money in the breed and the best prizes in the breed, to try and promote the breeding of foxtrotters. I mean, we primarily focused on the performance horse. At times we've had we at one point had barrel racing and pole bending. But
Mhm.
mainly just to try and promote stallions and the breeding of foxtrotters.
So how would you say the organization has evolved over the years? Is it pretty much structured the same as it was when it first started, or have there been changes to it?
There have been some changes. When it first started, there were like 2 different officers and boards, one for the National Association of Breeders and one for the National Breeders' Cup, or now called National Breeders' Championship. That got consolidated into one set of officers and one set of board of directors many years ago. But other than that, I mean, there's been tweaks as to fees and things like that, but it's functioned very, very much the same for the past 20 some years.
And why do you think it's been able to sustain this long?
Because I think there have been some people who are really dedicated to keeping it going and have worked really hard to do so. And I think it's a
Absolutely.
good idea.
Mhm.
All right, so let's switch it
Yeah.
now. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I would just echo what, Julie said there about there's really been a commitment from lots of different people over the years that have, put a lot of time into making the show a success. So, I think that's the biggest part of it, like Julie said. Dedicated to the association.
Absolutely. So Joe, I know you're a stallion owner. So I want to
Mhm.
switch and talk a little bit about that aspect of the National Association of Breeders. So Julie talked about stallion nominations and those types of things. But for stallion owners out there, what role does the National Association of Breeders fill for you guys?
Well, I mean, to me, and I know Doc will probably have stuff to add on this too, but the biggest piece of that is the get of our stallions will be eligible to be a lifetime nominated horse. Of course, from there, if you are passionate about showing horses and interested in it, there's not another show that offers the kind of prize and payback that the Breeders' Championship offers. So I think that's a huge piece to paying your stallion up. And, anyone that's, really passionate about showing horses, performance horses, it's a great, it does a great job, I think we do, of getting out there and putting our stallions in front of people. Amber, I know you work on this all the time, as we've seen several new ones added over the last few years. So, but I think the biggest piece of it, of course, like I said to start, is making those get of your stallions lifetime eligible, and those people able to win, substantial amount of money.
How about you, Julie? Anything to add about the role stallion owners play, or the Breeders' Cup or Championship plays in stallion promotion?
I think we are the best, most cost-effective way to promote your stallion.
Mhm.
Your stallion's on our website, your stallion's on our Facebook page. For really not all that much money, you're getting all that, whether you're really interested in showing or not.
Mhm.
And having had a stallion now since 1990, I think. You'd be surprised. We have people come and breed and they have no interest in showing. But some of those horses that were produced by that breeding have gone on to show and do very well. And some of those people who had no interest have an interest,
Mhm.
So I think just to say, well, I don't show, so I'm not interested. I think it's worth putting your stallion in, whether you plan to show or not, because you never know who's going to breed and may want to show. You may never know what you may want to do in the future. And by nominating your stallion, you're getting all that exposure, which is a whole lot of exposure.
Yeah, and I would add to what Doc said there too about as far as, folks that aren't interested in showing either. I do feel like going to our website, the NAB website, is probably the first place most people go to when they're looking for a stallion, because it's got a clear, concise list of them laid out there, along with our pages as well, that I know Amber's worked really hard on. So I absolutely agree.
I mean, there's really no other place. I mean, you can go to an individual farm's website and see their stallions, but there's no other place that has a list of different stallions like we have on our website.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can say as a mare owner, you can't breed a stallion if you don't know they exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It's very true.
And so getting that promotion out there, and it is handy. I mean, I use the National Association of Breeders site a lot when we got started in breeding several years ago, because it was one-stop shop. I could go on, there's a picture, you can kind of get a little background information, and you didn't have to Google search a bunch of different things. So it is a nice resource for people to be able to find information. So the other thing I remember years ago, I was one of those people that never wanted to show, and I ended up with a horse, and I started showing a little bit, and I stumbled upon the fact that she was a lifetime National Association of Breeders horse. I didn't know what that was. But then I was real excited because she was eligible. So I can remember the first time I came to the National Breeders' Championship and just thinking what a premier show it is and how exciting it was just to be able to show there. So talk to me a little bit about the show, where it's at, how people enter, all that kind of stuff. Who wants to take that?
Well, yeah, I would say I want to talk a little bit about our show to start, and kind of because there's a lot of folks on our board who do put in a lot of hours to make sure we have nice prizes for all of our participants. They do. It's like you said, it is a premier show, and it's a fun show to go to. So I think as far as that being a big selling point of the NAB itself, it is huge. Doc, did you want to touch on some other pieces of our show, as far as maybe I'll let you talk about getting into the show? Your horse, I should say.
Well, to
to
show your horse in a National Breeders' Cup Championship class, they need to have been sired by a stallion who was nominated during the year that foal was bred, the mare was bred, and the foal was conceived. So that's the first requisite. Then you need to nominate your foal for $100 by March 1st of their yearling year. And that was something we changed a few years ago. But you pay your $100 nomination fee, and then that foal is a lifetime nominated National Breeders' Championship horse. And whether you can show them at 2, 3, 4, if you don't want to show them till they're 5, that's fine. They're lifetime nominated. If you sell them, then maybe the person that buys them wants to show them, and they're lifetime nominated. And at that point, say you don't want to show them as a 2-year-old, but you want to show them as a 3-year-old, then you'll pay your $200 entry fee for that division by March 1st. We have some later deadlines as well, but by March 1st of their, let's say, 3-year-old year, if you want to show them as a 3-year-old. And then you're going to come to our show in August. You're going to show in some instances in a preliminary class, and in some instances not. We're not a big believer in having a preliminary class just to be having it. And the prize money is going to be generated not only from the entry fees. For the 3-year-olds, it'll also be generated by that $100 nomination fee. And then the stallion money as well. And so it's all those things that make up our prize money and have allowed us to have the best prize money in the performance horse breed, fox trotting breed. You know, and you got your nominated horse, you paid your entry fee, you're going to show up at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds. And this year we're going to be in a brand new building. It's air conditioned. I'm not saying we're going to air condition and have it 70 degrees like my house. But I think it's going to be very tolerable in there, no matter how hot it is outside. And you're going to come and have a good time. So
I do have a slide with the fees on it, so I'm going to pop that up real quick. So these
I
are
actually sent this to someone today, Amber. Yeah. It's very handy. Yeah.
yeah. So these are the fees that Julie was just talking about. So you mentioned this lifetime nomination fee, and that has to do with a yearling, correct?
correct.
So if you own a yearling today that was sired by a stallion that was nominated last year for the National Association of
Nope,
Breeders.
not last year.
Huh?
Not last year. They were.
It'd be the stallions nominated last year, or yeah, you're right. Be back. Yeah, you're correct. So yes, so they were 2 years ago.
Correct.
They were foaled last year. Thank you for correcting that. And then they're yearlings this year. You can nominate them as a lifetime horse. And so it's $100 by March 1st, $200 by October 1st. And then we get into the show fees, and there are lifetime nominated fees and non-lifetime nominated fees. So talk to me a little bit about that.
You want me to talk about it, Joe, or do you want to?
Sure, I can talk about it. So your lifetime nominated fees are going to mean that in that left-hand side of that, right under lifetime nominations, it means that either by March 1 of your colt or filly's yearling year, you have paid $100, or by October 1 of that same year, you've paid $200 for, and that fee basically makes them lifetime eligible, meaning that on the right-hand side, all those fees that are smaller or entry fees are the ones that you would pay when your horse is 2, 3, 4, and so on.
And so if you miss doing that, it doesn't mean your horse can't show.
Correct.
Correct.
So if you don't get them nominated as a yearling, then you can nominate them later. It's just you're gonna pay a penalty, is what it comes down to. So and I have paid that penalty on a horse I bought once, and I didn't like that. You know, and I can tell you that as mainly we breed and raise and show our own, but I do occasionally buy one, and buying one that's not, well, I can tell you when I bought the horse, I made him take money off because I was going to have to pay the penalty to show in the Breeders' Championship. So it's a lot better if you just do it get him nominated as a yearling. But if you don't, then you can get in later paying a penalty, which is what you see on that chart for entry fees for eligible non-nominated horses. Now they still have to, their sire still has to have been a nominated stallion in the year that they were bred for.
Yeah.
And on our website, you see the stallions that have been nominated this year, but if you go down to the bottom of that page, you can click on some links that will take you to a spreadsheet. And if you want to know, was this stallion nominated and paid up as a stallion 3 years ago, you can find that out very easily.
And so you only pay this non-nominated horse fee once, right? Once you pay it once, then you become a lifetime horse and pay those cheaper entry fees.
Correct. It's a one-time penalty. After that, you're going to revert to the show entry fees up at the top of the page that are lesser.
Yeah.
All right, well, very good. Well, what other exciting things do you have going on at the National Breeders' Championship? I think, Joe, you were involved in starting a new class last year.
Yeah, so last year we had our kickoff for our show pleasure, which essentially was a walk, and the second gate was what we determined to call as a show pleasure, where a variety of gaits are acceptable. But this show, or this class, I should say, was really to showcase pleasure type riding within our horses. So, it's not required to have Western or English type dress. A lot of folks did, and I think that's really cool. It's kind of what the direction we're after there, to showcase that your horse is a pleasurable, enjoyable ride, and just a neat extra place for folks to have to showcase their horse. And it had a great turnout, so we're looking forward to folks showing in it again. I know we're going to have some added money to that class again this year too. So yeah, make sure to dust off your English saddles and your chaps again this year, because it will be back.
So is that a class that only NBC eligible horses can go in, or who's eligible for that class?
That class is open to any registered foxtrotter, so they do not have to be a NBC eligible horse. So really all you've got to do is, have your horse there at the show.
Right. So that kind of takes me, and you mentioned a little bit, Julie, about our show schedule, because I know sometimes there's questions about that. So we have NBC classes, and they say on the schedule NBC, and then we have all these other classes. And the NBC classes are the only ones that are restricted by the stallion nominations, correct? Everything else is open to any foxtrotter.
Correct. So yes, if you look at our show bill, our class sheet, it will specifically say NBC 4-year-old amateur. That means they have to have been sired by a nominated, have been nominated, and then they have to pay their entry fee. But there's a whole range of other classes that are open to any registered foxtrotter. And it's not unusual for people, they may bring their NBC horse, but they may also bring another horse or two and show in some, as we call them, non-NBC classes. Those the prize money's not as great on those, but it's not bad. And there are championships, and you can win a garland in those championships for those non-NBC classes. So to me, they're not quite as prestigious, and the payback's not as good, but hey, they're fun, and you're going to get the same ribbon and the same garland as if you won an NBC championship.
Yeah, and of course, we also have people, as their horses get a little bit more age on them, that they can still show in those non-NBC classes and be a Breeders' Cup horse. So, while you're there, you can pick up another class or two. It's not uncommon. Yeah.
That's a good point, Joe. If you've traveled from, let's say, Kansas City or St. Louis, and maybe you're going to show in the NBC 2-gate class that's on Friday night, well, maybe you want to show in the ladies preliminary class on Thursday night and the ladies championship on Saturday night, and have a place to show all 3 nights and get your money's worth and your time's worth.
Absolutely.
So you talked a little bit about the payback in these non-NBC classes. The youth classes have actually quite a bit of money added to them. Correct?
Yeah,
Hey,
that's another spot when I was talking about our folks on the board, which I know I keep beating that drum, but everyone deserves a lot of kudos because there's a lot of folks that work to get those sponsorships and added money and added prizes. So yes, every year we try to have a youth sponsor for every division, and we add that money back into our youth classes. I think that's generally around $250 on top of, the prize money that we pay out as well.
And I'm sure you'd be happy if someone out there is listening and wants to be a youth sponsor. Be happy to
Absolutely. Give
help
me
them
a
with that.
shout. Yeah.
you can be a youth sponsor, you can be a non-youth sponsor. If you want to designate that, hey, I want to sponsor the men's championship, we will talk to you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about the National Breeders' Championship before I circle back around to the stallions here for a little bit? All right, I know we
Well, I would
talked.
just say, Amber, too. I would just add in there. I know we put it on our last couple years, but we didn't mention that total there. But both the last 2 or 3 years that we've mentioned, there's been a total of around $50,000, of cash and prizes. So just pushing the door. I think 47 last year, somewhere close to the year before. So it's definitely worth mentioning. It's a show worth showing up for.
Absolutely, and I know the board works to make that more and more every year. So
Yes.
definitely worth going to.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the fees for the show. And I know we talked about the stallions a little bit already, but I wanted to share a screen with their fees to talk about nominating stallions as well. So if everyone doesn't mind, I'll do that, and we'll talk a little bit more about stallions here. So there's 3 nomination deadlines for stallions: January, April, and June. And the price goes up a little bit, obviously, on each of those things. But it's still a really good value for what you get for nominating your stallion.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has our own website and purchases advertising in the MFT HBA book and does some other things, I think this is by far the most cost $4 I spend.
And we do have the National Association of Breeders does have stallions from all over, Oregon, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. I'm sure I'm missing a state there. So does have a very wide footprint.
Well, and it was 2 or 3 years ago, we talked at a board meeting, and we talked a lot about of bringing value to people. We wanted to provide something of value for their money. And I think this is one area that we've been really successful at, providing a whole lot of value for their money. So, and I'm going to point out the multiple stallion discount. A lot of people don't have multiple stallions, but as someone who does, I can tell you, I put 1 or 2 additional stallions nominated in this year just because it was going to cost me $300, and I didn't want to miss a breeding or have someone say, well, I'll breed to your stallion if you'll put them in the Breeders' Championship. I just went ahead and paid it because it was too good a deal not to.
Yeah, and I'll just say as a little different perspective on that, as far as I'm predominantly a mare owner. I know anytime over the years that I've, had mares are going to breed, that's the first question I ask. Is it a Breeders' Cup or Breeders' Championship eligible horse, stallion? So, yeah, it's definitely something that people out there pay attention to.
So Joe, why would you ask that question? Is it because of your interest in showing, or does it affect you being able to sell the foal down their way, or why would you ask that question?
Well, and I really think you probably hit it with both of those points. The colt is, or filly is naturally more marketable because, they are eligible for the, biggest payout show in the industry, for one. And then secondly, if, I want to show that horse, it's, you know, not even just that I want to be eligible for the prize money, which is great too. I want to be able to show it at that show. So, by way of that stallion being nominated, allows me to pay up that colt in the show.
So what are some common questions you get from people that we can clear up tonight as far as frequently asked questions?
I would jump in here, Amber. One that I get, and I actually got it today too, is running through the list of questions as far as, year conceived, what makes an eligible horse. And you really touched on most of that stuff. But the first thing I always tell folks is, okay, what year was the foal that you're wanting to enter, was it conceived? And then from there, go look at for that breeding year, which of course, technically starts in September. Go and see for that particular year, was that horse, paid up in the Breeders' Championship? And then once you start from that, you can pretty much count forward from there. But I feel like that's the most common thing I'm asked is, oh, well, is this colt eligible? I've actually got 2 or 3 of those this week, of folks that were out looking, buying younger horses. So, like I said, I would start there, what year it was conceived, go look at our list of stallions. Doc was mentioning earlier that there's a spreadsheet out there. I used it this week. It's really nice. That has I don't know how many years it goes back, but at least
It goes back all the
10
way to
on that.
1994.
Yeah. Yeah. The oldest one does for sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's not a year you can't look at out there on the website. Yeah.
Well, I will jump over to the website and we can look at that and show people where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the main page of the website, and this is the stallion link. And so if you click on this, you see all the listing of the current stallions. And then the listing you're talking about, Joe, is down here at the bottom. And they're split into 10-year increments just to make it easy. But if you pull that up, it just comes up a spreadsheet and it'll show you the X's mean they were nominated that year. It's alphabetized. So you can scroll down and take a look at that. So the other
Yeah,
question.
and this is just
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
just a really user-friendly little place to go and answer your question pretty quick, I think. So
So the other question you said you were asked, Joe, is if their horse was already a lifetime horse.
yes.
There's a listing of those as well under this NBC entries. We don't have any entries up here, but the bottom part actually shows the nominated horses. So you can scroll through there and see what horses were nominated in what year. So if you click on it, it'll show you the 2021 nominations.
And then lastly, I would say, even though we've got all this information out there, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, or I think we've got Danielle's email on there as well, that is doing our secretary stuff now, taking the entries. So plenty of good resources of folks to reach out there to if you're still
Yeah.
unsure.
And I know Danielle has, because I get copied on an email if it's sent to her. And I know she's answered some questions recently about, was the horse that's now 6 years old, was it, is it lifetime nominated? And she's been responding to those. So feel free to reach out to her, or, you're welcome to call me. Texting works a whole lot better. In that I'm frequently unavailable to answer the phone, but I will get back to you if you text me.
Well, that listing on the website is how I accidentally found out that my first show horse was actually nominated. I was playing around on it, and lo and behold, her name was on it. And I was like, hey, I can show in this. So you never know, and you never know, who that nomination is going to impact down the road. I mean, she was 12 when I started showing her. So, you never know how that'll work. The other question I get a lot is who has to pay the nomination fee. So a lot of people think that they're breeding all these mares, they have all these foals, and then they have to pay that, which would be great if they did. But really the most important thing is they're eligible, whether or not you nominate them as a yearling or not, because you can't fix the fact that they're not eligible.
Yeah, and
That's
I
a good
would
point.
agree. Yeah. Sorry, dropped my phone there. Yeah, and that all starts with the stallion owner. I bet Doc was fixing to hit on that, right?
I was, if you don't breed to a stallion who was nominated, paid up the year that the mare was bred, you're out of luck. There's a way to fix it, but it's prohibitively expensive to fix it. There is a way to nominate a stallion late, but the penalty is like $100 a month. So by the time you figure out that you probably should have done that, you got to have mighty deep pockets to pay that penalty. But the penalty if your horse is by a nominated stallion and they didn't get lifetime nominated, it is expensive as a 2 or 3 year old. There's no doubt about that. After that, it's really not all that much more to get it done, and it's just a one-time penalty. So
And I'm certainly not encouraging people not to nominate their yearlings, but I do think the most important thing is making sure they're eligible.
yes.
You can make decisions down the road on what's nominated or not.
Absolutely.
All right, what else do you think we need to cover this evening?
I would say, I think our website is more user friendly now. It did have some glitches last week. I'm pretty sure we've got worked out. So I think you can learn a lot from our website. If you have questions, feel free to contact us. And, we've had a lot of great shows since 1997. And we're going to be in a brand new building this year. And I think we're going to have an awesome show. And I hope a whole lot of people come and show their horse. And if they're not going to show their horse, at least come and watch, because you're going to be sitting there very comfortable.
What are the dates of this year's show?
Oh, well, now you asked me that.
Like, don't ask me
11th
that.
and 12th, I think.
10th, 11th, and 12th. Sorry, I should have sprung that. I didn't put that on the cheat sheet for questions, did I?
Yeah.
You'd think I'd know it as many times as I answer that question. So.
Mhm.
All right. Well, very good. Any final thoughts, Joe, before we close out?
No, I would say, just like Doc said there, make sure to come out and come out to the show. It's going to be at a new facility. I know everyone's going to be anxious to get in there and take a look at it. You know, should be very comfortable for you to come and watch, and bring an extra horse or two.
Well, my
And,
final closeout will be nominate your stallions. So there's
Yes.
still time.
Yes, that
Time to get
too.
all the promotion. People don't breed unless they know your horse exists. And people are looking. There's questions all the time about stallions to breed to in people's areas. And investing the $400, $500, or $600 is really not that much for a year-long promotion.
And as a stallion owner, I can tell you people are starting to call and starting to come and look. So you need to get them nominated. And then if you're a mare owner, you need to breed to a nominated stallion.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it earlier, but we should hit on our, first date is just right around the corner as far as paying up your entries. So, the cheapest option to do it, of course, we looked at a little bit ago is by March 1st. So there is a link on the website. You can do it online, or of course you can mail it in. So make sure to get those entries in.
Entries, yearling nominations, stallion
Yes.
nominations. Now is the time to be getting all that done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
And I've got a flower in my front flower bed. So hey, it's almost spring, guys.
Yeah,
It is.
it's here.
It is here. Well, thank you guys so much this evening for sharing some thoughts on the National Association of Breeders. I think it's a great example of an organization that started with an idea and has sustained for a long period of time and continues to be successful. And those are great things for our breed, regardless of what you do with your horse, to have that promotion out there. So again, thank you guys for sharing this evening, and I hope everyone that watched enjoyed it, and it'll continue to be on our Facebook page for anyone to watch in the future. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, thanks, Amber, for putting it together.